Good afternoon, boys and girls. A question we're often asked is why is it that we're able to facilitate such rapid and lasting resolution to cases that are label resistant to treatment? So today I wanted to give you a brief overview of the work that we do here in my center when we are faced with situation cases symptomology that is resistant and has resisted every other approaches. And I've been asked to give some clinical case files, some clinical case examples. So I think one of the projects we're going to embark on this month, in these coming months, is to describe how we process from a situation that is stuck, a state of blockage that has resisted all other modalities, all other approaches, and how it is that we are shifting that state so easily, so smoothly, so beautifully, so nurturingly, comfortably into absolute and radical transformation within a question of weeks or months at the most. The principle is we are working with the most powerful parts of our body and mind. Number one is we're going to calm your central nervous system. If your central nervous system is in fight or flight, there's no modalities that is going to be able to have rapid and lasting results, simply because when we're in fight or flight, it's a sense of urgency, emergency, and life or death situation. So if you're familiar with the concept of the sympathetic response of the central nervous system, it's a question of life and death. It's a systemology that is based within us to be able to allow us to bolt and escape predators. That dates back to the beginning of our species. What happens is there is a chemistry that takes place with the high level of stress hormone known as adrenaline, cortisol, that are being released into our system. Those hormones ignite massive sense of contraction internally. Everything squeezes internally. Why is this? Simply because this was designed to help us prevent maximum blood loss if we were to be sliced, bitten, and damaged by predators. So everything squeezes internally, and which results in, if we're to be sliced, we're going to lose less blood. Today, when we ignite these massive amounts of stress hormones, chances are we're not going to be sliced in most cases. And so what that does is everything restricts internally. Your blood vessels restrict, there is less circulation, and therefore there is less oxygen being transported by the blood into your brain, into your vital organs. So that's why when you're in a state of high stress, we've all noticed your thinking, your prefrontal cortex goes down, it becomes down-regulated because all of your blood circulation restricts, there is less oxygen to the brain, therefore your thinking goes down, and that's when you find yourself freezing and no longer able to respond. In that state, obviously, transformation becomes halted because everything is on high alert. So our first step is to calm your central nervous system. And we do this with a very comprehensive approach that helps you go from the sympathetic mode of the central nervous system to the parasympathetic mode. In other words, from fight or flight to rest and digest. You find yourself in a very comfortable state of peace that is extraordinarily rejuvenating already as it is. So the hormonal and chemical balance in your brain changes, and we see that with electroencephalograms of the brain in the state that we produce in sessions, which shows the change in chemistry. So the stress hormones are being flushed out. They're highly inflammatory, by the way. They lead to a debilitation of your health over long periods of time. We've all been long taught into the lasting results of toxic stress on our health over the course of our lifetime. So when you enter that state that we facilitate in session, you are shifting that brain chemistry, releasing those highly inflammatory stress hormones, and boosting your brain with the natural opioid system in our body, which are your natural feel-good hormones: dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, oxytocin, all the hormones of pleasure, relaxation. So suddenly you're switching already from a brain chemistry perspective, from a central nervous system perspective, from fight or flight to rest or digest, which immediately restores your health, your wellness, and your ability to shift your state. That's the first component, addressing the central nervous system. The second component is we work with the architecture of the brain. That's the science of neuroplasticity, brain plasticity, the science of epigenetics that shows us that the brain is over the genomes. With our brain, we are able and capable to determine which genes are turned on, which genes are turned off. So with the architecture of the brain, we then investigate what are the reasons for our current symptomology. In my case, I'm a regression expert, forensic regression expert, both in criminal cases and clinical cases. So I address root cause. So we take your symptoms and we follow them back in time to where they came from, which allows us to unplug, exactly as if you had a lamp, a device that was plugged into electricity and it continues getting activated or deactivated, and you're willing and wishing to deactivate it. Well, if you're taking the plug and you unplug it from the wall, that device will no longer activate. So in other words, that's basically what we do when we regress to cause. We take your symptoms, we go back and find where they're coming from, what activates them. So we can investigate the architecture of your brain, what is happening in your brain that is leading you to act and react the way that you do. We then work with your biology of beliefs. Have you ever asked yourself if your belief system, if your beliefs were really your own, if they are serving you, if they're really what you find truthful? And especially when we have negative beliefs, feelings of a lack of adequacy, lack of self-love, lack of self-esteem, lack of courage, lack of resilience, lack of resistance. Are they really your own belief, or were they simply handed over to you by others who just simply handed beliefs to you and you decided, okay, well, you thought they were the truth, which is what happens when we're very young and we're taught you are this way and you're that way, and we're accepting this without truly knowing without knowing better, because we're taught when we're little that we don't know anything and we should believe what other people tell us. So in doing so, we're working with the architecture of your brain, we're working with your belief system, the biology of your beliefs, and we are therefore able and capable to reprogram your personality, which most people don't even know is possible to do. You identify, most of us, before we come into this work, we identify with our personality and we think, I am my body. Well, we know that's not true because our bodies are continually changing. We think I am my brain, and that's not true. The brain is simply the operating system that controls our body. And then we think I'm my personality, and that is simply an act. In fact, the etymology, the roots of the word personality come from the Latin persona, which means mask. So when we work at this level of the mind, we're able to determine which aspects of your personality are no longer serving you and which aspects you would like to embody. And just like an actor changing role for a new movie or a new play, you're then able to choose your personality in a way that fits your goals, that fits your ideology of quality of life, because that's the most important. So I've given you a little bit of a understanding of how we work in my center to transform conditions that are thought to be impossible to shift, which is simply a belief once again. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to go through a few clinical case over the course of the next few weeks or months to give you an example of how easy and how rapid it is. So here I'm going to take the example, one of those that I bring warmth to my heart, of a 40-year-old man who was sent to me by his psychiatrist, the chief of psychiatry of a very large medical center, telling me, Geneviève, take over. We have tried everything. This person is highly intelligent and non-responsive to treatment. That man had been diagnosed with a very large number of physical, mental, emotional conditions, decades of medications and conventional therapy of all sorts had been unsuccessful. He was experiencing chronic generalized arthritic type of intense pain in every joint in his body, a number of other conditions that had come to such unbearable pain, fibromyalgia, that he had attempted to take his own life multiple times. There was suicidal ideation and suicidal tendencies. And he told me he felt his skin as if his skin was on fire through his entire body. Imagine the level of pain. So these medical doctors had been prescribing him pain medication. And as you all know, we build accustomance to pain medication. And so he needed more and more and more continuously. And he reached a point where his medical team told him, sorry, we cannot prescribe you anymore. And the pain medication was no longer working, and he became irate, filled with rage. And that's when he was sent to me, unable to sleep at night. So imagine for a second here being in absolute excruciating pain from head to toes, every joint in your body, your skin on fire, unable to sleep at night. You can imagine the level of agony of this kind of condition lasting for so many years. He told me 30 years of agony. His body being so tired, I cannot close my eyes at night from the pain that I'm in. It's exhausting. It's maddening. My eyes want to close, but they don't close, becoming too ill to function, so no longer able to be employed. And that's in the condition he was sent to me several years ago. When you are undergoing this kind of excruciating agony, obviously your brain no longer functions in a way that is allowing you to go about your day-to-day life. He got lost on the way to my office, couldn't find my office, was completely confused. And then when he finally arrived in my center, he was pacing the room, unable to sit down, holding his head in his hands, bent forward, telling me, I'm in so much pain. Even when I'm having a normal conversation with somebody like you, there is a voice in my head screaming to punch you in the face. And here I am behind my desk looking at this giant man, 6'4" or something, very, very massive and imposing, thinking, all right. And I spoke to his medical team. They said, it's your call. We don't have a record of him being harmful to others, simply self. And I decided to help him. And so we began with sessions. And as always, I take the symptoms, I calm the central nervous system, I bring you back into a state of deep physical, mental, emotional relaxation, where we can take those symptoms that are preventing you from functioning normally and from experiencing quality of life and regress them back to cause. Of course, we all know Eastern medicine has been teaching us for centuries that when there are traumatic events happening to us, the body keeps the score. The body is absorbing the shock, the guilt, the shame, the blame, the pain, and trapping it internally. And if we're not addressing it, it creates tension that becomes solidified. And so in Eastern medicine, they're using acupuncture to address those blockages of energy and release them. And they've been teaching us for centuries that if we're not releasing that trapped tension, it festers and turns into dis-ease. So we are addressing it in a different manner with my teams. We're not using needles, we're using the emotional force, we're using acupressure, we're using different modalities that allow us to take those symptoms and regress them back to cause. In the case of this man, it went back to being a 3-year-old in a basement and being attacked and endangered and assaulted in ways that were so traumatic that the brain was not able to process and started contracting and holding on to that pain, and then it continued. So as always, if people address symptoms without addressing the cause remains active. And that is why forensic regression, and I'm talking in terms of forensic because in criminal cases, I use forensic regression to return to the scene of the crime and identify the culprits, the perps who did what, who said what happened that created that event. In clinical cases, I am using the same methodologies. We're taking the symptoms, regressing them back in time to identify, address, and release the cause for a current malfunction. So in this case, we went back to an early age 3-year-old, and we are bringing at this time, it's so nurturing, it's so gentle, it is so protective. We're bringing the adult self, so in his case, this giant, powerful man of today, back in time through the course of his journey to rescue the child who he was at 3 years old when he was made to feel terrified by adults. So when you're 3-year-old, when you're 3 years old and you're compromised, attacked, and terrified by adults, there's nothing you can do. When you're an adult going back in time, revisiting that event, you are able to stop the culprits in this case, collect that 3-year-old, remove him from the scene, and restore his emotional fabric. We know we're not our bodies continuously change through the course of our journey. So by the way, if we're not our bodies, we're not our brain, and we're not our personalities, who are we? Very simply, we're energy. And quantum physics, the science of the infinitesimally small, keeps telling us that constantly. Everything we see is energy. Our brain translates the energy that we see in shapes and forms and matter and the concepts of time and space, which quantum physics tells us it's all illusions. Everything is energy. So when you think about yourself in terms of energy, in terms of life, you know that through the course of your journey, your body changes from the moment you are conceived in the womb to the moment you are 110 or however long you decide to stay in your physical body. Your body has taken all these different shapes, and yet it's still the same you within. It's still that same unique life force. So when we're regressing back in time, we're taking the life force of today, which when you survived the unsurvivable, you are a survivor. You are strong, resilient. No matter the level of pain you're in, you have survived. So we're taking that survivor back through time and space and rescuing the 3-year-old, rescuing the little one within at a moment in time when that little one was terrified. So we step in, your adult self and myself, both of us as a SWAT team rescue operation, and I'm combat trained, so there is no messing around with me escorting you back to rescue that child. We're coming to that little one and we're rescuing that little one, removing that little one from that situation, collecting that little one, bringing that little one back with you, and able to have a conversation with that little one now and help that child, that younger you, understand that what happened at that moment was nothing of your fault. It was simply a reflection of other people's problems, realities, their internal wounds, their internal demons, their misunderstanding, the way they were raised or not raised, what they were taught or not taught, none of which has anything to do with you. So at that moment, we're able to rescue that little one, repair the wounds, let that little one understand that from now on, you, the adult self, are going to be with that little one from this moment forth, and no one and nothing will be able to take the two of you away. So from now on, that little one has you, your adult self, to protect them, to hold them, to love them, nurture them, cherish them, and protect them from this day forward until the end of times. And we're able to repair the wounds and to help that little one understand that from now on, you're taking that little one into your life of today to have and to hold, to protect, and to cherish. And that little one can finally begin the best childhood of their life, knowing they're now safe. Nobody is going to get to them. because you've got the adult self protecting them, and they can finally be themselves. So that man, to make a long story short, leaves his first session with me, first session, already transformed. He goes back home and takes a nap, and his wife called me and said, Geneviève, the change in my husband is amazing. He looked so different when he returned from his session. I actually took a picture of him because I'd never seen him looking so peaceful, so serene, and so relaxed. He went to sleep and took a nap, and I was so startled to see him sleeping peacefully that I actually took another picture of him. He told me he felt so peaceful. So that man continued working with me for a few months, addressing different aspects of his personality. And later on, his wife came to see me, and then his daughters came to see me, and began with his medical team, with his psychiatrist, adjusting the level of medication that he was taking, because suddenly the pain in his body was being released. He was feeling calm. He could sleep at night. He learned, because when you work with me, you learn how to calm your central nervous system yourself. You learn how to place yourself in that state by yourself. It's an empowerment, an educational approach where I teach you what I've learned along the course of my journey and my lifelong research with the brain and with the central nervous system, how to do what I do yourself, so you become rapidly empowered. So within a matter of months, he was able, with one-on-one with his psychiatrist and with his medical team, to start lowering the doses of his medication and therefore alleviate the side effects that were associated with the medication. In less than a year, he had become medication-free. He had started athletic training. He had resumed feeling good about his life. And I think a year and a half went by. And suddenly one day he called me asking if he could bring his baby girl for a session because she was afraid of zombies, and she had nightmares at night. And herein comes into my clinical center this man that, I kid you not, I did not recognize. He looked like Richard Gere, cover of GQ magazine, or George Clooney type, well dressed, clean cut, physically fit, was now working with the government in a government job. A complete transformation. I called his psychiatrist and he said, yes, complete transformation. I agree. I do not recognize in myself. So this is the kind of transformation that we see happening. It's a course in miracles day after day, when we're addressing symptoms, not from a symptomatic approach, simply covering up the symptoms, but from a systemic approach, following symptoms back to the cause, to investigate why they are there, address, release the cause, reprogram the brain, the central nervous system, and later on work with your personality and find facets of your personality that you decide are no longer serving you, and identify which facets of your personality would be serving you better, and work together in implementing those personality facets that will allow you to reach your dreams and accomplish experience quality of life that you probably have never experienced before, and reach heights you never imagined possible. So this was one case in so many. I will be covering one after the next that I wanted to share with you to help you understand why we are able to facilitate such rapid and lasting transformation, even in the most treatment-resistant cases. Thank you for tuning in with me today, everyone. It's always an honor and a pleasure working with each and every one of you, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, make it a beautiful week. Ciao, ciao.